local Indigenous people and elders past and present. I think that we're standing here on an absolutely magnificent beach, and I'm just so glad to be back here. As a young surfer, I used to travel this coastline, and Avoca Beach is the stuff of dreams. It is one of the primary globally acknowledged quality surfing areas along the New South Wales coast, which is a coastline of significance in terms of surf and beach culture. Why do I look at it from that point of view? Because it's one of those cultural icons of the Australian society. Being able to go to the beach, enjoy the summer, enjoy clean, clear water, and get out there and not think that, as we have in so many other areas of the world, what's nasty, what's in this water. I'll come to the issue of the Adelaide, the sinking of the Adelaide in a moment, but I would just like to say it's fantastic to see and talk to people who are connected on various issues of the environment in this local community. I pulled out of my choice of t-shirts. I've got quite a collection because I've been to so many protests and things over the years, but I deliberately pulled out a non-blue one. It's called Turn the Tide, Save Broken Head. It's my home area. I live up the north coast, just south of Byron Bay, and not a dissimilar community. And we've pushed back Club Med. Back in the 80s, the Rand Labor government had Broken Head advertised as the total one-stop tourist destination resort potential. They called it the jewel in the crown of the north coast. Well, I say it's still that jewel because we stopped Club Med, we stopped the major academy development. We've actually held up and said no to whatever government's in power at this particular time, both Labor and Liberal. We've stood up as local community and we've worked long and hard in the courts, on the ground, demonstration and lobbying our politicians, and that's what I see happening here today. It's like a reaction that's moving along our coastline. I was also at Emerald Beach, where we stopped an ocean outfall in pristine National Park offshore area. And we stopped that. You might have even seen at one stage we built a great big poo, 8 metres long and 2.5 metres wide. And I travelled with that up and down the coast. It's the sort of thing that we do to create a caricature. And it's a little bit like the hat I'm wearing now. I mean, why? Why do we have to be debating over Empire Bay substation? I've got my own substation here. Look, bald head, need a hat, little solar-powered fan, and it's working beautifully, and I'm very happy. When will governments of either persuasion get the message we need to decentralise and get away from this heavy-handed, centralised approach that's ripping our ground apart with the development of the extraction of fossil fuel and all the problems with coal mining? Don't they get it? Yes, I'm afraid they do get it. I wanted to follow Chris Archer, but he insisted I come up first, so I can't be too negative about the Liberal Party. But both sides of the political spectrum aren't biting the bullet on alternative energy source, on being more sensitive to the environment. We don't need to locate that power station. I've seen the pictures. Pristine coastal environment. Too valuable to be ripped apart by a substation. And beyond that, we've got one of the major problems for bushfires in this state, and that's overhead power lines, and the government doesn't get it. So, Chris, I want to guarantee when you do get up, I want to guarantee about those overhead power lines, put it in the ground. I want to guarantee about lessening the amount of destruction that the coal industry is allowed to rampage through our communities. And I say loudly communities, because we are changing. We're getting away, one would hope, and there's going to be a difficult election coming up, because you're on the one hand an absolutely disgustingly corrupt, burnt out New South Wales Labor government that deserves to go. But on the other hand, and let's look back a little while, you've got a coalition government that's very beholden to big business in this state, and I'm waiting for Chris to get up and convince us otherwise. But the level of destruction that they've undertaken when they were in power, remember Grinder's top drawer promises and bottom drawer promises, depending on what suits them. So there's only one way to deal with this situation, with either major party. Now, I know the Democrats were sort of on the right direction when they said, keep the bastards honest. I don't even bother about that. And look, this is not official green policy. This is my thoughts to you only. Keep the bastards nervous. And that's what we've got to continue to do. There is no excuse. We can save on bushfires by undergrounding power. It shouldn't just happen at Empire Bay and the lines out here. It should be happening all over the state. I've been asking that, but the problem is governments come and governments go and bureaucracy stay in positions of huge power. We've got to break that down. We've got to work at breaking that down. And Kariong, sacred land, Aboriginal rock art, endangered species. May I suggest that this sort of situation is repeated all the way up and down our coastline. And it's absolutely vital that we recognise that we as coastal dwellers owe respect to those people who've lived here lightly on the land for many generations ago and still do. And we as coastal dwellers have to also appreciate that we can't hide out and have a little side on the coast and think nothing's going to happen and we'll just enjoy our retirement or bringing up our kids and going surfing. Because as Michelle Mears very clearly said, we've got government that wants to, because it wants to hide basically the Iguana Gate affair, they go ahead with announcements about dumping a warship off our shore and creating a situation which is a great unknown. How do we know if the fish we catch here for the next 20 years with that ship offshore is safe for our kids to eat? I say our kids particularly because they're very susceptible to lead poisoning. We learned all about that lead poisoning to the point where they took the lead out of the fuel in our vehicles. And also Michelle's raised the issue of the amount of aluminium. And it is a colossal amount that must be recycled. And if you get the boat here, which I'd like to think I doubt, and it's not because I want to see it sink further down the coast, but there is quite a likelihood of that. We're dealing with a situation which is just unsound. It's about as unsound as the substation. It's about as unsound as the destruction that the coal mining industry is doing to our environment. And it's all part and parcel of big government mentality. Now, I have to take odds at one issue that was brought up today, and I understand that a lot of people with private property feel very sensitive about what's happening, what the government's done with the Coastal Protection Act. I moved 17 amendments on that, 24 amendments, and this just gives you an idea of how the Greens work. We moved 24 amendments, we got 17 up, and I think we knocked off some of the excesses of that act. It's a very difficult situation, but you can't just presume that private property has the right of way on what is part of the commons. You can't put rock walls up and down our coastline and maintain our beaches. It's extremely expensive. They call it a new tax, but the fact of the matter is we've got to work out a balanced approach. Now, I'm not happy with the bill. The coalition's not happy with the bill. Many landowners aren't happy with the bill, but, you know, they're trying to get something right. It's a very difficult situation, but I just want to put one thought into your minds on this whole thing. We don't want to sacrifice the beaches and we don't want to sacrifice the commons. It's absolutely important because these beaches are worth so much more to our future generations and also in basic income to our society. They must be maintained at a level where there's a quality of life that can be shared by all. I'm saying it's taxing the residents, but people knew what they were getting into for years. I go back on the Blondgell Spit, my home territory. People are impacting on the government, very powerful people, but they knew when they bought in there 20 years ago. The local council put a statement on the records when the land was sold, informing people of the dangers. So we've got to look back 20 years and acknowledge that very little has been done, but it's not a surprise to say that we've got a major problem that could collapse whole economies if it's not dealt with in some way. I'd just like to say that, and I'm glad to hear that John Kay is coming up and getting together with the Empire Bay people early next week. John Kay is another Green Member of Parliament. I've raised the issue of the Adelaide warship many times in Parliament. I've dealt with Tony Kelly about this and many other issues. And it is difficult because the government has got the ear of big business on the one side and a quick fix, something glossy, you know. Who's going to push the button, as Michelle said before? That's what they're interested in because they're desperate to get a win. Well, you can't get a win unless you deliver substance. And they failed to do that. And I say to the next government coming in, deliver substance. Deliver substance to the community. Stop the spin and you might get some acknowledgement. But you're going to have the Greens on your case all the time from now on. And we're growing just like the community's becoming more aware, and we're not going to go away. Right. 2 minutes? I'll go with 1. I've got the knock at 8 minutes, and I know that you've been very patient standing out in the heat of the day. Let me just put something to you that's very important, that's worrying the hell out of me, and I cannot go away without mentioning it to every community. There's going to be a landslide to the coalition, and I have to say, Labor deserves it. I'm not stepping in on that issue. But in the upper house, look at the numbers and be mindful, because if that landslide is repeated, then it will deliver a massive number of members to the coalition, but it puts Fred Nile and the Shooters Party in a position of balance of power. And I think there might be some in the coalition that don't feel that comfortable about that. Don't presume the Greens will have a say in the next government. Be mindful, whatever way you go in the lower house, because it's a first-past-the-post situation, and I don't expect Labor to win, and I don't particularly care because they've been disgusting, but there needs to be the voice of environmental and community-based reason in the upper house, and that doesn't come from the Shooters and Fred Niles. But please keep that in mind. Other than that, good on you, all power to you, maintain the rage. You got a great display of people and information today, and yes, you can change the world, particularly this bit of coastline. It deserves your support. Thank you.